Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
I have with me today Mr. Dmitri Trenin. He is the director for Carnegie's Moscow Center. Welcome to ThePrint, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be on the program.
Thank you. Sir, I'll quickly start off, some of the new developments that have started between India and Russia. And it seems that now the relationship probably will go into another phase. Both sides have just announced that there will be a 2+2 format dialogue, which India does only with the US and Japan. But we've also seen how relationship between India and Russia has also been changing, if I can use that word, over the past 2 decades or so. So how do you see this new phase? Do you think this 2+2 will sort of contribute towards developing or elevating the relationship to another level? Your thoughts, please.
Well, I certainly hope so. I think that this is a relationship that for both countries, for both India and Russia, offers more than either country is getting out of this relationship for now. The relationship has to be rethought, and I believe it is being rethought by the people in both Delhi and Moscow, given the realities of the new balance of powers in the world, the new trends shaping the world's future, the ambitions of both India and Russia, and the new complexities. Just give you one example, Russia's closest international partner of the major powers is China, whereas for many Indian people, China is the biggest challenge or even a threat to India's security. Give you another example. Russia is in a confrontation with the United States, which is a long-lasting phenomenon. And this confrontation is only getting more intense. For India, however, the United States is a very valuable partner, and even a security partner when it comes to relations with China that the United States sees as its most serious rival, competitor, adversary, and potentially could be an enemy. So we live in the world in which Russia's relations with India should not be defined, should not be guided by Russia's relations with China and America. But by the same token, India's relations with Russia should not be shaped according to India's relations with China and America. Those two powers, which have very different policies toward India and Russia, are very important factors, but they should not be the principal defining factors. India and Russia should pursue their bilateral relationship, which is of high value for both Delhi and Moscow in this more complex and complicated international environment. That's the issue. That's the problem. And that's why having a more structured relationship, having a relationship that brings together on a regular basis foreign ministers and defense ministers of the two countries is something of truly significant, of true significance or true importance in today's world.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. So when you talk about more complexities coming into the relationship, now we've seen, and I'll come to the fact that, how US-Russia relationship can have an impact. However, we've seen in the last couple of years how India has aligned more towards the US with the Indo-Pacific strategy. The government has also invited Russia to be part of it, the Indian government. But now India is also part of the Quad dialogue. And Russia clearly calls them to be anti-China policies. It talks more about the Greater Eurasian Plan. So keeping these things in the background, do you think they will be able to develop the bilateral relationship when there are underlying tensions like these?
Well, I think it's a real test for China and Russia, for Russia and India, because both countries claim, and I think with right, to be independent, truly independent powers in today's world. There's a lot of talk about Sino-American bipolarity. Well, China and the United States are the two superpowers of the 21st century, no question about that. But if we take one step beyond that and say that the world is likely to be divided more or less the way it was divided during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States, then I think we'll be making an analytical mistake, but also a political mistake if we decide to go down that road. In today's world, many countries depend on the United States for their security, and they will follow the United States because security dependence is existential. If you depend on somebody for your life and property in the final analysis, then you will have to follow that country. Neither India nor Russia depend on the United States for their security. Neither India nor Russia depend on China for their security. Well, this is more of a question about Russia, in the sense that Russia certainly does not depend on China for security. If anything, China depends on Russia for some military technology, for some other security products or security services that Russia can render China, like helping China develop a missile early warning system, right? But Russia is very much, this is the essence of Russia, to be its own master, to be its own boss. It's in the Russian DNA not to accept anyone as one's mentor, neither the United States nor China. And this is how things are today. This is how things will be looking ahead. So India should not be worried about Russia following China. This will never happen. Never, absolutely, because that goes against the grain of the Russian identity. Now, there are questions in Moscow about how far India would go in cooperating with the United States. And Quad, again, to be very blunt and frank about that, Quad is seen by many in Moscow as an instrument that the United States is using primarily to contain China. And as an analyst, I would agree that to a certain degree, Indian and American interests are close in some respects regarding China. And this, if you like, rapprochement between India and the United States on security issues is natural, quote unquote. You have to accept that. But on the other hand, I cannot believe, I don't know much about India. I know something about India, but I'm not an India expert myself. But from everything I know about India tells me that India is not going to be anyone's follower, not America's follower. It may have policies that are running close or are in parallel with the United States on certain issues. But imagining India as Japan or Australia, two other members of Quad, is stretching things too far, in my view. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the challenges the challenges that stand between India and Russia are big, but different. Russia's challenge is to manage relations with China and India, even though China and India have a very complicated and, I would say, adversarial relationship at this point. For Russia, both countries are very valuable partners. They are two great powers of Asia, and Russia wants to have. We don't have the time to go into details about the Russo-Chinese relationship or Russo-India relationship, but both countries are seen from Moscow as very, very valuable partners. And Russia's interest is to make sure that relations between India and China run more smoothly than they do today. Now, India's challenge, in my view, again, very humbly, I'm not an expert, and certainly I'm a foreigner. Who am I to talk about what India's challenges are? But they seem to me to be being one's own person, India, and use the United States for the interest of supporting India's security and expanding India's economic clout, economic, technological. That I think is where the core of the Indo-American relationship lies today. Not so much in security. There are limits to how close India, in my view, could be to the United States in security terms. But economics and technology are the two great areas of Indo-American cooperation. How can India manage its relationships with the United States on the one hand and Russia on the other hand? Again, two countries with which India has close relationships, very different caliber, different structure of relations, and yet you have two friends that are not friends between the two of them. Just like Russia has two friends, India and China, that are not friends between the two of them. So those are that's the challenge of India's and Russia's foreign policy.
So if I can also ask you about the Russia, India, China, the trilateral dialogue is there, which has a very ambitious agenda, but we've seen, despite the India-China standoff that began in early 2020 in the month of April, May, Russia played the role of a mediator, although it did not admit to it. But we saw an Indian government committed. They also admitted publicly how they feel comfortable in discussing these difficult things with China when they are in Russia. So do you think the Russia-India-China dialogue, the RIC, should work more towards bringing sort of more cohesiveness? And also, there's another angle to it. This time when Foreign Minister Lavrov was here, he visited Pakistan and he stated certain things in Pakistan which did not really go down well with the Indian government. So how do you see that also emerging as a possible concern in the relationship?
Well, there are two questions here. The future of the Russia-India-China dialogue or trialogue and Russia's relations with Pakistan. I think that they are different issues. You did not mention, by the way, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is also an interesting instrument. So let me deal with the three of those issues. Russia, India, China. I think that Russia understands very well how proud India and China are. And Russia will only seek mediation, or seek is the wrong word, maybe accept the role of a mediator if asked so by Delhi and Beijing. And what Russia is doing, I think, has been doing and will continue to do, is facilitating that dialogue using various means, etc. So not really, carrying messages, not urging India to accept something that China wants, not doing the same thing in Beijing. Russia is not doing that, but Russia is urging and making it easier for India and China to engage in that dialogue. For Russia, that is the way forward, because these three countries, China, India, and Russia, are the three major powers on the Eurasian continent. And I would say the only three truly independent centers of geopolitical and military power in that part of the world. You have NATO in Europe, but that is very much an extension of American power. It's not, Europe does not exist as a sovereign strategic player, right? And there's no one of that caliber in the Middle East. Japan is very much a U.S. ally, and that's full stop. That's it. So those three countries hold in their hands the future of security in Greater Eurasia. And that's why the relationship among the three of them is very important. It's also important from the Russian perspective as a means of engaging China in a friendly way so that China does not dominate the great continent of Eurasia. That we're all friends. Let's take an idealistic attitude. We're all friends. We're all partners, but not one of us is none of us is a serious is the senior partner, right? We're all co-equals, although we are of different caliber. India and Russia and China. All right. So I think there's a future in Russia, India, China. And I think that should be pursued. That certainly should be pursued by Russia. And I think it should be pursued by India, particularly if India fears China's dominance and if India fears that Russia may become China's follower, which, again, I would dismiss. But I see that many people in India believe that this may be the future or maybe even the present. Okay, so a way to deal with that is through that trilateral format. Pakistan, I think that Russia is essentially guided by a realist view of the world. Pakistan is primarily important to Russia in view of Afghanistan, which is a generator of tension, and with the forthcoming U.S. withdrawal, U.S./Western withdrawal from Afghanistan, it remains more of an issue for the neighboring countries and for the great powers of Asia and Eurasia, including India and China and Russia. Pakistan holds some of the keys to Afghanistan. It has a relationship with the Taliban. The Taliban, whatever you think of it, you cannot deny that it's a major force in Afghanistan, and nothing can be done in Afghanistan without the support of the Taliban. That's maybe unwelcome,
sure,
but that's the reality. So, on the other hand, Pakistan is a big country in terms of its population. It has a population which is far bigger than the population of Russia. Of course, in India, you look down on Pakistan as a much smaller country than yourselves. But for Russia, it's a big country. Again, for Russian foreign policy today, I think this is something that our Indian friends should take the note of. Russia seeks to have pragmatic relations with everyone who counts. Look at what Russia is doing in the Middle East. It is on working terms with everyone in the region. Israel and Iran and Saudi, Turkey and the Kurds, everyone, right? The Sunni and the Shia. And this is the pattern that Russian foreign policy has adopted for the wider world. It's a far cry from the ideologically driven Soviet foreign policy that had friends and enemies and that kind of thing. So Pakistan is important, and I think that I cannot comment on the remarks that Mr. Lavrov made. I don't know what remarks caused a stir in India, but there are things that Russians don't like about Indian pronouncements with regard to the United States, but Russia is getting used to that. I mean, India is a sovereign power. It sees things the way they fit into the Indian worldview, Indian interests. Similarly, Russia is a sovereign power. It's a friend of India, but not all Russian interests are exactly the same as India's, and vice versa. We need to get used to that. That's you talked about a new epoch or a new page or whatever, new stage. This is the new stage. And that's why it's important to have regular contacts between important officials of the two countries and thrash things out. Friendship should stay at the core of the relationship. But then there are interests, and interests need to be managed. Friendship is unshakable. I don't see Russians turning into, an unfriendly nation to India, nor do I see it vice versa. But interests have to be managed.
Mm-hmm. Sir, and also, and probably this will be my last question, you make some very interesting points. Now, what I really wanted to understand, India, as you said, India and Russia will be friends no matter what. And maybe that is the reason why, despite this tremendous pressure from the US, be it under the Trump administration and now under the Biden administration on the S-400 transaction, right? India has said that we will go for it, and the fact that that's the best for us. Now, there's also this thing going on between a lot of think tanks and other critiques that India-Russia relationship, although it is long, they are now going into more of being a transactional relationship, whereas Russia's place in India is being now taken over probably by France. Now, that's just one thought process, one sort of school of thought that's going on. And of course, we had US Defense Secretary visiting India, Lloyd Austin, and he stated in indirect terms, though, that that the S-400 purchases have not yet been made. They can give CATSA waiver to India, but still that's not clear. Once the procurement happened, then they'll take a decision. So do you see the future is going to be much more challenging for these two friends to remain friends?
Well, I think I said that at the very beginning. It's a more challenging environment in which India and Russia operate. They have to rethink the relationship. I said that I think that the rethinking of the relationship is proceeding on both ends of the relationship. However, I also said that I believe that basic friendship between the Indian people and the Russian people is not in question, and I think it should remain so. However, managing interests is a challenge. Now, a lot of the things that you mentioned are actually tests. It will be a test for India. This is how it will be seen in Moscow, at least. What decision will eventually be taken on the S-400 issue? Clearly, the United States does not want Russia to sell arms to anybody. The United States and Russia are locked in a serious and long-term confrontation. And there's no let up to this confrontation in the foreseeable future. And the United States will pressure Russia very, very hard. And those who deal with Russia will feel part of that pressure, small part, but still will feel it. However, as experience shows, if a country submits to pressure, then there will be more pressure so that the submission is more secure. If a country manages to stand up to pressure from the United States, if the United States believes it has other important interests with India, and it would allow, say, a waiver to India because it believes that the relationship is worth much more than allowing Russia to have a slice of the Indian arms market, or to have a relationship with India that really counts. Then India will have won points also in Washington. It will be treated as a country that deserves more attention. Pressure and prestige come together. If you withstand the pressure, you enhance your prestige. I will also tell you that, again, you don't hear much about that, but certainly our Chinese neighbors are not very happy with Russia supplying arms to India.
Okay.
Clearly, and I'm sure some of them are, well, the Chinese are less, let's say, overt in their pressure, and they're less public about that. And they also know that, trying to pressure Russia will be counterproductive. You try it, and maybe this is the last time you do it. And you lose outright, because Russia will not allow itself to be dictated to by another country on issues that are of major interest. And that includes, I think, the Indo-Russian arms relationship. I don't think it will be simply given up by Moscow as a gift to Beijing.
Okay.
So we'll see. We'll see how India operates under these circumstances. With regard to France, well, I don't think that France, we talked about Europe not being a strategic partner. France can sell arms, but France remains, as I said, part of the US system of alliances. And France can do things, but up to a certain point. France does not really qualify as a great independent power in the 21st century world, nor does Europe yet, although Europe has enormous potential in all respects, in all degrees, but it's not essentially by choice. It's decided to outsource its security to the United States through NATO, and that includes France. So France will not take Russia's place. It may supply its aircraft to India. It will be happy to do it in lieu of Russian aircraft, and that's the choice for India to make. And there's heightened competition in the Indian arms market, Indian arms bazaar. Russia has lost some ground recently. With regard to the transactional relationship, no, I think that for Russia, at least, India is strategically important. It's not just transactions. It is, you cannot compare the importance of India to Russia with the importance of, say, Pakistan or Iran. It's in the same, potentially, it should be in the same category as the importance of China. Mm-hmm. And but that depends very much on India's continued rise economically, but also in geopolitical and technological and other terms. But in principle, Russia has reserved a place in its worldview to India, which is similar to the place occupied by China. And if India lives up to that, and I wish it to live up to that, India will take that place.
Sure. On that note, Mr. Trenin, thank you so much for talking to ThePrint. You please take care.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. All the best to you. Stay healthy.